he actually handed her a bunch of money, and she thought it was for the abortion. And he said, no, that's not a real doctor. You're going to a real doctor. We're going to take you to one right now, and you're going to have this baby. And I really believe that the Lord, heard her prayer, obviously. And so then my dad shows up. And so my dad took her back to El Paso, and immediately my grandfather, who I truly believe was a saint in life, he said to her, you, from this day forward, you are my daughter, and don't worry, I'm going to teach you the faith. And it was like, oh my gosh, like I have been missing out on so much. And all of a sudden I'm like, I love being Catholic, and this is what I want for the rest of my life. Like the Lord chose to change my life that day. I'll never forget when she tells the whole story, and then she says, and that little girl is Cristina.
We'll pray, and we usually do everything else in post-op. But we always we pray first, and then we go into it. Although I don't think we did that with Daniel da Silva, did we? Did we pray with him?
I think we prayed upstairs.
No, I don't think we did. But Cristina, you're a spiritual director, so.
Oh my gosh, my sister was dying laughing at that.
All right, in the name of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Mary, pray for us.
Pray for us.
All right.
And JP too.
Yes, and Mother Teresa. Okay, cool. So are we good to go? All right. So as I was saying earlier, you're my spiritual director. So thank you for coming on to this podcast and blessing us with your presence and your beautiful soul.
Oh,
and the reason why I wanted to have you on, though, was because of the fact that I knew that you could give the best commentary possible on the new Pope. I'm just kidding. But no, it's because I think it is so crazy how your story of life, like the pro-life aspect of your testimony, like wove into like all of our Lindsay and my life. Like
Are you gonna make us cry?
I don't know. But we shouldn't start crying. That's good.
What a way to kick it off.
Viewers start to drop. Oh my word, they're getting emotional. No, but I do really think that's true, because I've told people about your story before, which has a strong pro-life message, and I'm not going to give anything away. But it's amazing to me, because I always heard stories about other people where it was like, my mom almost, got me aborted. And then she changed her mind, and all these things happen as a result, and you see that all the time at pro-life stuff, but that had never like directly affected me. And I just think about it all the time. I'm like, well, wow, like if Cristina wasn't here, like we would have never had those conversations. You wouldn't have been my confirmation sponsor, all of these different things. We wouldn't have our house, so I just think it's so cool. And obviously the most important thing you've blessed us with is our home. So thank you for that. And sorry, I couldn't help myself. But anyway, so how long have you been Catholic? Just kind of overview, like quick general overview. What's your story of being Catholic and all the different things? And then I'll ask questions along the way.
Okay. Well, I have been Catholic since day one.
There you go.
Always, my whole life.
You are a cradle.
I'm a cradle Catholic. Yes. So this does actually tie into the story of the sort of the pro-life aspect here, just because, my dad grew up in a very devout, super devout Catholic family. I mean, amazing parents.
And where did he
in El Paso.
Up? Okay.
Both my parents are from El Paso, Texas. We could do a whole podcast just on my grandparents on my dad's side.
Awesome.
Just because my kind of like John Paul II, my grandfather used to put on plays in church. I think they both were involved in this.
So he was like an actor, or like he just helped out with the theater?
No,
or?
They would just put on theatrical productions in order to raise money to build churches Catholic churches in El Paso.
Wow.
Yeah, and then they had this tiny like two-room home, but it was right next to this Catholic church, and they would when people would immigrate into over the border, you know, they would that would be the stop. They would stop there. They would get a haircut, a shower, a meal, you know, maybe overnight stay.
Yeah.
Which is amazing because, well, I didn't mention that my grandparents my grandmother gave birth to 19 children.
What?
She did a lot back then. You would lose more babies.
Yeah, I understand, but still 19 is a lot.
Right. So they ended up with like 13.
Wow.
But they actually adopted number 20, who was just this homeless kid living in their garage. So anyway, the small, tiny 2-room house, but yet they would still welcome people to come and stay with them, you know, and then send them on their way. Mm-hmm. But they were, and then also they were basically like the sacristy for the church.
Wow.
Because they would do all the work for the church. And so my dad grew up, you know, in the church, kind of like it was like his playground. Like he spent all his time either at home or in the church, you know.
This is your grandfather then, or your dad?
My dad, I'm saying, because of his grandparents,
got it. Okay.
Spend so much time there. And so anyway, so my, again, you know, very devout family on that side. But then my mom, her mother was very devout, but she had spent many, many years away from the faith. You know, my grandmother's children didn't necessarily pick up on it for a long, long time. And so anyway, I grew up, so at a certain point, my mother did become devout, thanks be to God. And I don't know if you want me to tell her story yet, but
oh yeah, I mean, go for it.
Jump in.
It's natural. Go for it.
Yeah, I'll tell you that story, and then maybe we can get back into how I grew up. But so my mother, and I have to preface this by saying, for many, many years, I knew this story, but I didn't. It didn't touch me the way that it does now. I can't even start talking about it without getting emotional now. It's, for some reason, it hits different now. Yeah. It's really like it's hard for me to talk about. Not because I'm sad about it, probably just because it's just amazing what God does. And that's what's moving to me about it. But anyway, so my mom had lost her mother, and then her father, and then a sibling, and then her aunt, and then she was very close to her family, and then she had her, I might have that a little bit wrong, but her grandfather, she was living with her grandfather and taking care of him, and he was taking care of her, and then he died. And so
how old was she around all
she
of this?
Was, oh gosh, let me just think for a minute. I want to say she was like in her early 20s.
Wow.
Because my mom had me when she was 25. So she was very young, and so she lost all these people in her life consecutively. Yeah. And so she was just having a really hard time. Well, anyway, she meets my dad. She ends up pregnant, and she didn't want my dad to marry her because she was pregnant. Mm-hmm. So her solution was to just leave town. So her sister was in California.
So she leaves Texas.
Yeah.
When she gets pregnant. With you.
Right.
Okay.
With me. Sorry. I'm not always good at filling in all the details.
That's all right. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So she went to Huntington Beach, California, stayed with her sister, and she was just like, I'm going to, you know, she didn't know what she was going to do. So she went to go see a doctor. The doctor said, listen, you can't have a baby. You are broke. You're unmarried. You're young. You have a whole life ahead of you. You aren't in a position to have a child, but you're in luck because we just passed a law and we can take care of this for you. It was, right after Roe v. Wade passed. Mm-hmm. So anyway, then my dad somehow tracks her down and comes to Huntington Beach and says, what's going on? She's like, well, I'm expecting, but it's okay. You don't have to worry about it. I'm taking care of it. I saw a doctor. I just need to pay this much money, and then it's taken care of.
So how far away is Huntington Beach, California, from where she was in Texas?
Like a good 12-hour drive.
Jeez. And this is pre-internet.
Right.
And your dad just finds her. How does he find her?
He contacted her sister.
Ah.
Yeah. He he tracked her down. Like I said,
Man.
yeah. And so anyway, which is really cool because, there was love there, you know? So anyway, and I mean, I don't think they had dated for very long.
Okay.
That's, so then my dad says, well, he actually handed her a bunch of money and she thought it was for the abortion. And he said, no, that's not a real doctor. You're going to a real doctor. We're going to take you to one right now. And you're going to have this baby. And so anyway, but in between my mom going to Huntington Beach and my dad coming, she actually tells the story that she stopped. She was just kind of like beside herself.
After seeing the doctor? Or...
Yeah, after seeing the doctor. And she stopped in a Catholic church, and she hadn't been to one in 14 years. And so she stopped in a Catholic church, and she just was sitting there basically talking to the Lord and saying, Lord, I'm so ashamed. Like, look where I am in my life. Like, I'm about to do this terrible thing, And I really believe that the Lord, heard her prayer, obviously. And so then my dad shows up, and so my dad took her back to El Paso, and immediately my grandfather, who I truly believe was a saint in life, he said to her, from this day forward, you are my daughter, and don't worry, I'm going to teach you the faith. I'm going to catechize you. Wow. So he started to basically teach her the prayers, like start from the beginning, like the Our Father, the Hail Mary. And then they would sit down and have catechism classes every week. And then eventually...
And this is the grandfather who was like helping put on theater plays and all that kind of stuff. And like it is kind of reminiscent of like JP2 kind of stuff. That is really cool.
A lot of JP2 similarities, absolutely. And my grandmother, his wife, is a whole nother ball of wax. Just truly the most amazing people. So anyway, my grandfather, even after they left El Paso, because my dad got a job in San Antonio, they would have weekly calls where he would continue the catechism. Like, he took it very seriously.
Wow.
That she was going to learn the faith. And so anyway, they were married. I was born like a month after they were married. And then, my parents eventually, I think they only spent maybe a year in San Antonio. They moved to Dallas, and they were living in East Dallas, members of St. Pius Parish there. And then they ended up joining a prayer group there. I don't think that they were the ones that started it. I think there was another, like a deacon who started it, but they joined, and it was Charismatic. And then that eventually he had some ties to this charismatic community, Catholic Covenant Charismatic community.
Okay,
it wasn't actually fully Catholic, because there were a number of Protestants there.
Okay, because that was what I was going to ask, is like in Protestant world, when you say charismatic, that can mean a lot of different things. And you are the first person I ever met that used charismatic and Catholic in the same sentence. I did not know that these groups... In fact, I still remember when this happened. It was when we first met you, and Matt led the prayer. It was the first time we were at our house. I know exactly. You know exactly what happened? Yeah. And he led the prayer, and it was just like a, bless us, O Lord, these thy gifts. And it's very much like, regimented. And then you just went, and Lord, we thank you for the Robertses. And then afterwards you said, I'm sorry, I'm charismatic. And I was like, all right, follow up on that later. And now you're on my podcast.
We're going to come back to that. Yeah.
So what is a Catholic charismatic?
So,
from your just experience, not like a textbook definition or whatever.
Well, yeah. And I'm probably not, I'm going to get this wrong because I forget these things, but basically like I want to say in the 70s, there was maybe it was the 80s, could even be the 60s for all I know. But there was a Catholic, something sort of started, which was the Catholic Charismatic Renewal. Yeah. And there was, and I think it actually, well, at least in Dallas, I know where it started. It started there was this meeting in a high school in Dallas, and it kind of started from there. I don't know where it started perhaps in the United States, but anyway, the people who were the leaders of the community that we joined, which was like 350 families. Wow. they were really involved in like the forefront of this whole movement.
Yeah.
And so this man, Bobby Kavnar, was the head coordinator, and there were other coordinators. And this is, my family grew up, we would go to mass on Sunday, and then we would go to prayer meeting on Sunday.
Wow.
So every Sunday, we would go to prayer meeting at 3 p.m. And, it would start with a lot of praise and worship music. And then, there were, the kids, so it was an amazing way to grow up, because there was children's ministry, there was junior high ministry, youth ministry, young adult ministry. And so we would go to our ministries, and then our parents would sit in this prayer meeting, and there were prophecies, and there was, a lot of speaking in tongues.
Wow.
And,
okay. That's what I was going for. I was like, I didn't want to just assume, but
we actually probably have never had this conversation, which is amazing.
Have not. Yeah.
So, this is a really cool example of how it was in community, is that it seemed like, I always feel like the devout Christians are always the ones that like end up dying of cancer. There were like so many deaths of people having cancer or bad accidents or whatever growing up. And anyway, whenever there was a death, at the funeral, we would dance around the room.
Wow.
Because it was, a time for rejoicing that this person was at least closer to being with the Lord, if not with the Lord.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, it was a wonderful way to grow up. Very wholesome. I was the only one in my family to go to public school. That's a whole nother story, but, only because the school that they went to didn't have my grade yet. They were kind of adding one grade at a time. And so I went to public school, and I had a lot of friends, and I was, voted most friendly in my high school, but I didn't have to depend on the people at school for my social life, because, I had my youth group, and we would meet, so we're meeting on Sundays. We had Hearth on Wednesdays, which was like a Bible study.
Okay.
And we would go on backpacking trips to Colorado.
Oh,
wow. We did a lot of fun stuff. Yeah. So it was like those were my closest friends.
It reminds me of who's that Saint Pierre Giorgio?
Yeah.
Doesn't he like kind of like that? Like from what I've heard.
Yeah.
A lot of my knowledge from saints comes from children's stories in the car, but I feel like I always test the waters, and I'm like, is this accurate about that person? And they're like, yes, yeah, that's him. Good, because it was a children's story, and I was very moved by it, and might have had a little bit of a tear, and just moved on. But I wasn't sure if it was true. But they well done production.
You're learning a lot about the saints through your children's audio books and such.
It's Saints Alive. That's what it is.
Saints Alive.
I love them.
Okay.
You got to listen to Maximilian Kolbe.
See, I grew up...
And John Paul II. They have a 3-part series on John Paul II.
Oh, really?
That's why I have that painting over there, because I found out about Maximilian Kolbe. Well, Maximilian Kolbe I was already reading about, but then I found out about John Paul II, and I found out about his love of the rosary and all this kind of stuff, and then tied the pieces together reading about Maximilian Kolbe. But yeah, Saints Alive. Highly recommend that to everybody. In fact, I actually want to try and get them on the podcast. I feel like that would be really cool.
Well, you guys have a lot of stuff that we didn't have when we had Veggie Tales, and that was about it.
Yeah, which, By the way, did you know there's a funk episode?
No.
Yeah.
No, I'll have to tell Daniel
one of our
that.
friends who converted with us, they're in South Carolina, she listened to it. Daniel's, our previous interview with Daniel Da Silva, which is From Funk to Faith. And she listened to it, and she was like, I feel like there was a VeggieTales episode where they started a Christian funk band, and it's real. It's a VeggieTales episode where they started a
I wonder if Daniel
Christian
has been
funk
told
band.
About this.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, so there you go.
Oh my gosh.
But so this charismatic movement, you basically are backpacking, you're learning all this kind of stuff, and like, was there any point where sounds like you had a very lively faith? Like, did you ever have a period of doubt in the midst of all this, or anything?
Well, so for me, I was always tethered in some way, but that doesn't mean I was necessarily always living it, And
that's how a lot of people are.
Right. I guess that's normal, but
wild youth days,
Yeah, I definitely had my wild youth days. But the thing that I would say, sort of the other side of that, I'm so grateful that we grew up in community. And I mean, I would say, aside from all the experiences and it was the people. The people were just so wonderful. And these were people who were very active in their own parishes and like pillars of the community, the wider community, but they were also involved in this community.
So just real quick clarifying question. You're saying that like this community group that you would do had multiple, like people from multiple parishes.
Oh yeah. They came from all over, from all the parishes around the Dallas Metroplex.
Wow. Okay.
But they were all our family.
Yeah.
That's what was so amazing about it, is that they were all like the women were all our aunts.
Yeah.
We didn't really have that like, oh, like they're an adult separation. Like they were such close people in our lives.
Wow.
And then, they were there for our family during the good times and the hard times, and our family went through a lot with my dad being sick for a long, long time and stuff like that. And so these people were like our people. So anyway, but the other side of that is that for me, when, so I was in high school and I so at my public high school, there was a theater arts teacher who was a Black pastor, and he would have this gospel choir that he would form every year at our high school, and it was like 800 kids. Wow. We'd meet before school in the morning at like 7 a.m. So you had to be really committed. Yeah. And he was like, if you're failing or you're getting in fights or anything, you get in trouble, you're out of my choir.
Wow.
So, and nobody wanted to be kicked out of it was called the Unlimited Choir. And so anyway, here I am like.
You had 800 kids in that choir?
Yes. And I mean, almost every last one of them were African American.
Wow.
So people still to this day like refer to me as like the Mexican girl from the choir. Only because I didn't even blend in. Like the first year that I joined as a freshman, I was like, I'm trying out for a solo. Like I want to be. And so I didn't get a solo the first year, but every year after that I got a solo.
Wow.
And so anyway, it was such a great experience, but I really didn't feel connected to my Catholic faith, unfortunately. Okay. And so I started to be like, I went to his church a few times and I was like, what's the big deal? What's the problem? Yeah. Why do we have to be Catholic? And so I was, as I was graduating from high school, that was where my head was at. Mm-hmm. And Providence, I tell you, and good parents. My mom signed us up. I mean, I had just graduated from high school. I'm still living at home. And my mom signed us up, my sisters and I'm the oldest of 5 girls, to help with something. Yeah. We didn't know what it was. And so I remember asking her like, well, what is it? And she's like, I don't know. She's like, Elizabeth Langwell is going to be there. And, these women from Community. Okay. And so I was like, all right, so it's a whole week long thing. Right. And she didn't say like it's camp or anything like that. She didn't know what it was. Yeah. So we go, and it turns out, this is crazy, but there's something called Youth 2000 that started in England, and it was like, to try to bring kids to, in anticipation of the year 2000, to love of the Eucharist.
Oh, wow. So it's kind of like a mini Eucharistic revival thing that was started in the UK?
In the UK, yes. The guy who started it, it'll come to me, but I can't remember his name. But anyway... and so what we were there to prepare for all week was the first Youth 2000 retreat in the United States, which was at University of Dallas.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And so anyway, so all week we're just working, having a ball, but working to prepare for this weekend retreat.
When you say working, what do you mean working? Like preparing a facility, or like preparing your hearts and minds?
Name tags and registration and I mean just everything. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah,
but
I just wanted to figure out what you meant by work, because sometimes when people say, we were working and we were preparing for the Lord, or whatever.
Oh, no. We were like physically working.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Sweat equity. Sweat. Exactly. Yeah. And so anyway, we it was one of those things where it's like you're in the midst of something you don't understand. Mm-hmm. All you know is that you're having a great time with a lot of great people and you're working. Yeah. And so then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday was the retreat, and people came from all over the world for this thing. Like the guy who led the music was a priest from Ireland. Wow. And then the CFRs, who are for those who don't know, the community.
I'm one of them, by the way.
Oh,
I
really?
know that it's a religious community, but I don't know what it is.
I have failed you. No, I'm just kidding.
Come on, step it up. All right.
So
you're gonna be a spiritual director. You're gonna have to do better than this.
I guess so. Yeah. So CFR stands for Community of Franciscan Friars of the Renewal.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So their the most famous CFRs are. I was going to say Pope Benedict, Father Benedict Groeschel,
okay,
who was a psychologist and just a wonderful saintly man who was one of the founders. There are a number of founders. I want to say 7 or 8. Another, Father Stan Fortuna is a priest from the Bronx who's like a musician. Like he was in Daniel De Silva's band, by the way. Wow. He would play with them sometimes. And so anyway, so the CFRs to this day, but starting from that retreat, would run the retreat with the other people who ran it, who are Anne and Susie Brawley, dear friends of ours, and just wonderful, wonderful women. They're mother and daughter. So the CFRs would MC the retreat, and they would give the talks, and they would hear confessions, celebrate Mass, all of that.
Yeah.
Benediction, and the kind of the calling card of this retreat is that there's a burning bush in the middle of the room. It's usually in a gym or whatever.
Oh, wow.
And it's a wooden structure that has candles all around it. And then the monstrance sits on top. Oh,
that's cool.
And it's not there throughout the entire retreat, but it's there a lot. So a lot of the retreat, you're in adoration, and it's just. So I always say about U2000, and this is really relevant to why it made such a big impact on my life, is that it's the meat of our faith. Mm-hmm. So a U2000 retreat, there aren't gonna be skits or like any. Mm-hmm. I'm all for that stuff, but this particular style of retreat, it's like Mass, adoration, confession. Talks about, so the sacraments, obviously. The rosary. Did I say that? Rosary. No. Yeah. The rosary is always prayed every day. And then the talks are about the Eucharist, Mary, confession.
Wow.
And then there is like praise and worship. And so I was from the first one at UD, I was involved with the music, and for years and years and years, I was helping with music for all these Youth 2000 retreats. But I went, and I was gobsmacked. And like
your first time going to this thing is as a senior in high school?
I had just graduated.
Just graduated.
I was 18,
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and it was like, oh my gosh, like I have been missing out on so much, and all of a sudden, I'm like, I love being Catholic, and this is what I want for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It completely changed the course of my life, I think. And and thanks to my mom, who didn't say to her 18-year-old daughter, hey, would you like to go to this thing? Mm-hmm. Like we tend to be so,
passive.
Yeah. And, we're like hesitant to ask that. When we ask, I always tell parents, like, don't ask.
Yeah.
Just sign them up.
Yeah.
Because
use your authority.
Yeah, because, you just never know what the Lord wants to do. And chances are they're going to tell you no if you ask. Yep. So don't ask, Yeah. I'm just like so thankful she didn't ask me. I definitely would have said no, you know? So anyway, so that was a big, I would say like a big turning point in my life. And then, and I realized that I had missed out on that, growing up in this very charismatic community. It was wonderful. However, that wasn't that I really feel like for myself, at least, that was kind of missing.
Yeah.
It wasn't very Catholic.
Do you think that some of this, because I was just posting on social media to a couple influencers and stuff about the new Pope and stuff. And I wonder, it was Matt Fradd actually on his Substack. He was telling some of it's interesting to, well, I'm not going to go off topic, but he was talking about the fact that people were kind of like, oh man, this is an American Pope, and the American church is struggling and all this kind of stuff. And he started listing off like all of these Catholic ministries or apostolates, like, oh yeah, the Bible in a year. You saw that post?
Great post.
And it made me realize, that when you come into the church now, that as you come in, you'll hear all these horror stories from Vatican II from people, you know, depending on where, like, you know, our priest started all of a sudden, just like overnight, you know, he changed a whole bunch of stuff, and it was like really jarring, and, you know, I still miss it or whatever, you know, if you talk to older people, and then, you know, just listening to testimonies of people who, like, after Vatican II, like, walked away. But do you think that there was some wisdom, though? Obviously, at least from what I can tell, it seems like some of these things, like what'd you call it, the 2000
Youth 2000,
and some of these movements that happened kind of happened precisely because of it, the encouragement of evangelism and trying to, like, get people to return to the meat of their faith. Because you talk to a Catholic who's older and walked away from the faith, they're like, I remember what the vestments mean. I don't remember anything else. You know? Are
you saying that it was because of the getting away from the tradition and or because of the sort of new spirit of evangelism? Not getting away from tradition, but understanding, like, it seems like to me when I read the Vatican II documents, it seems like to me there is a serious bridge being made out to people, both Protestant and non, that have seen the church either through movies or through just, like, Latin, maybe. They're like, well, I don't know Latin or whatever. There were these bridges that were made not to subvert tradition, but understanding that, like, if you're going to evangelize, you got to figure out how to, like, punch a hole into the, like, for people to come through into the tradition of adoration and all this kind of stuff. Because to the outside world, it's like, well, what are you doing? You know, I don't understand why you're doing that. And you listen to, like, Father Mike Schmitz, his first time in adoration is pretty interesting. He's like, you know, I was so excited to go, and I thought I was going to, like, just love it. And I was like, what are we doing? You know, and, you know, you'll hear these testimonies, and now people, you know, as they practice it, they begin to grow in their love for those kinds of practices. But it seems like to me when I hear stories like this of, like, these apostolates that kind of, like, you know, popped up, and for Protestants who listen, that's like parachurch ministry language, but Catholic. Like, when these things, it doesn't seem like there was a lot of movement going on, or am I off in that read because I'm just looking at it through a convert's lens? No, I think that I think that was during the time, maybe perhaps from, like, this, like, I don't know if it was the 70s or 80s, I can't remember, but let's just say from the 80s on, you know, that where it just started to, things like this did start to pop up. And there was a need to help people connect to, you know, connect their heart to their faith. And I have a friend who you all know, Margaret. And I remember thinking years ago, before I knew her very well, we were having these women's holy hours in the chapel at St. Gertrude. And I was helping lead the music, and I didn't think she would be interested in it. And she said, no, she said, praise and worship, it helps us to open our hearts and be vulnerable in a way that we wouldn't perhaps otherwise. There was something else I was going to tell you. Oh, so I love this analogy that a friend told me. So I'm always very skeptical of new, you know, like, let's just say I was skeptical of alpha when I first heard about it. Okay. But
I was skeptical of alpha when I first heard about it too. Yeah.
And and things like that. There are all these, you know, rebuilt and divine renovation and all these things. And to me, of course, they just don't sound very Catholic. So anyway, when alpha came on the scene years and years ago, I was always like, no, you know. And then this friend of mine dear friend of mine who I've been friends with since middle school, her husband, who just so happens to be now the national director of divine renovation, he had implemented alpha at their parish for many years and very successfully. And I was like, well, Jenny, what are the fruits? And she's like, Chrissy, she calls me Chrissy, like, homosexual couples coming into the church, Muslims coming into the church, entire families coming to the church because their teenager was invited by somebody, you know.
Wow.
And so all kinds of amazing fruits. But what she said to me about what alpha is she said, it's not catechesis. It's not meant to be RCIA.
Yeah.
She said, and it didn't start out Catholic, by the way. It isn't Catholic.
Right.
But Catholics use it. And she said, well, if you want somebody, let's say that, you know, Jesus is a house or Christianity is a house, and you want people to enter the house. Well, how do you, it's very hard. They're not just going to walk in.
Right.
Like, so alpha is like getting them onto the porch so that you can welcome them, get to know them.
Yeah.
And maybe down the line, they'd be willing to enter the house.
Yeah.
But you got to get them onto the porch first so that that's even a possibility. And I thought that was a really great analogy. And I think, but anyway, Youth 2000, yes, was definitely one of those things where it was like, okay, all of a sudden I understand because, I mean, we are, I've said in recent years that like when it comes to evangelizing teens and such, our job is to get them in front of our Eucharistic Lord.
Yep.
And I mean, of course, there are other aspects to this, but I really do believe that if we can get kids in front of our Eucharistic Lord, He will do the rest. He will change their hearts and He will set them on fire. I'm getting a little choked up.
That's all right.
And I think that's what happened with me,
Yeah.
is that the Lord just like set my heart on fire. And I mean, I'm not saying it was like smooth from there because it wasn't, but it was definitely a huge turning point in my life. And so anyway, there have been a few. That's one of them.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's I just think, I know that the Eucharist and adoration and stuff is odd to people outside of, but it really is like something happens in front of the Blessed Sacrament. And it was the weirdest thing because, I had one Catholic tell me, I think I told you this before off camera, but not today. There are things when you convert that you feel like, gosh, man, I really like missed out on a bunch, like missing out on those kinds of things. Or even just reading Matt Fradd's post and you're like, man, there are some Catholics with like some battle scars, like from all this stuff that's been going on. Not just like the, scandals and things like that a lot of people are familiar with just because they follow the news, but even just a lot of the confusion that came out of things, should you receive on the hand? Should you receive on the tongue? Just
the liturgy.
Like all of these different things. And they still stayed true to the faith in spite of that. And then you talk to one of those souls and you're like, like I'm talking to you right now, and you're like, gosh, there's a depth there that, you suddenly feel like you're like a little baby again and you're like learning to crawl, And, but I think that the other aspect of it with the Eucharist is what I said to this other Catholic. I said, sometimes I'm kind of bummed because, we didn't get married in the church. There was never even a thought to even discern like priesthood or religious life or any of those things, because that was the weirdos, like the only, the Catholics do that because they're nuts. And talking to him, and I said this, and he said, yeah, but you had the scriptures and I didn't have the scriptures. And there was a priest at St. Gertrude that gave a talk on John 6 about, the Eucharist and Jesus saying, eat my body, drink my blood, or you don't have eternal life in you. And he talked about the importance of, Protestants oftentimes emphasize belief in that passage and Catholics emphasize the sacrament. And he's like, well, you're supposed to emphasize both. And when I first came into the church and went to adoration, holy hour, the first time, all of the sudden I realized I was looking at the gospel, like in real life, and it was the Bible teaching that I had, which was very, very good, leading up to this moment where all of a sudden you realize like, man, I'm looking at the gospel. And the thought that I had was, because I had a difficult time as a Christian and being isolated a lot of times because of just athletics and where it took me and stuff. And so I didn't have a lot of churches that I could plug into. I didn't have a lot of Christian friends. And I can remember just being like, God, I just wish you were here, like here in the room.
Wow. He answered that cry of your 100%. Heart big time.
And so then at St. Gertrude's during adoration for the first time, and all of a sudden, you're not like bawling, but all of a sudden it's like this waterworks starts to happen that you don't have, like you found what you're looking for. Like it feels like, the scriptures without the Eucharist is a shadow of things to come. And you're like, well, we'll see it when we get there. Maybe one day I'll have a lucky situation where I get a dream from God or something. It'll just be so nice. And then you go and you sit in adoration, and all of this biblical understanding from your parents or professors or teachers or whatever, God literally like strips away the errors, and in front of the Eucharist, it all comes together, and it's very moving.
It's that closeness that you can't get any other place, any other way, you know? Yeah.
Do you think that it's going to be like, I'm curious because your kids are older, like, what do you think? And if you don't want to answer, this is totally fine. But like, what are some of the challenges of helping kids see the importance of adoration in the Eucharist?
Well, can I talk about it just kind of more generally than our kids?
Yeah.
Because you actually said something that reminded me of something that's super important to me. And it actually ties in with, so, I think I told you, like, my conversion wasn't this one big thing. It was like I've had these different moments. And that was I would say the first. Maybe the second was when we came to St. Gertrude. So, Matt and I lived in Italy for 7 years so I'm from Dallas. We lived there for a few years when we were newly married. And then we lived in Italy for 7 years, and then Boston for 5. And then we came to Cincinnati. And thankfully we had some good friends here. Yeah. The Enders, and Elizabeth Enders was like she was my spiritual guide. She said, Anna was in preschool. Anna will go to Good Shepherd Montessori. The kids will go to St. Gertrude, and you will be parishioners at St. Gertrude. And I'm so grateful because and it's just so amazing. God is so good, because we came here to look for a house. Yeah. Just Friday.
I know what that's like.
Yes, we've been there together. We came on a Friday, and we left on a Sunday. We go to Mass on Sunday at St. Gertrude. And I knelt down in that church, and I immediately had this feeling that I was home. And to this day, there is nowhere really that I love to pray more than at St. Gertrude. And I think that the reason, and that's saying a lot because, I've spent 7 years in Italy, but it's like, that place is it's so big and open and vast, and you feel very small in it. And it's also very stark. There's not a lot going on in there. It's the architecture and everything is just the style is very simple. And so for me, I think I am easily distracted. And so for me, it's like, and I like to be in the front 2 or 3 rows, so I don't have to look at anybody. I just want it to be me and Jesus, maybe I'm missing a bit of the communion theology part of the Mass, but no, actually that's not true, because I was telling Matt recently, I think it was like Good Friday, we had to sit in the back, and I was like, man, one of the things I love about this is just looking around the church and seeing so many people I love in this place.
Oh, yeah.
And like of all ages. Yeah. And I just feel such a kinship with these people. It's amazing. Okay. So we come to St. Gertrude, and we had a wonderful parish in Boston. But, growing up as a charismatic, I really hadn't experienced like really beautiful liturgical music. And also, obviously, like, we're at a Dominican parish, liturgy, and I truly believe this, and this is kind of where I'm going with it, is that the way we worship is so vitally important. That is like, I wish I could just be like the poster child for that statement. But anyway, so I go to St. Gertrude, and my dear friend who I was on the phone with as I was driving here, Catherine Fishlock, was the music director. And she has the most incredible, not only the most incredible voice, but the most incredible way of helping us pray the Mass. I miss her. Yeah. Only because
she's coming on the podcast. By the way.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to talk to her.
She's the voice in my head. I love her, the way that she prays. It's not just her singing; it's the way that she helps you to enter into prayer. Yeah. So anyway, Catherine, but it was so funny because when we first arrived at St. Gertrude, I hadn't been exposed to that type of music.
Like sacred liturgy, like sacred music.
Really beautiful, reverent, traditional, sacred music. So I didn't appreciate it. And I remember I would complain to Matt and be like, I can't tell what she's saying. And I don't know. I don't get it. You know, like I just didn't appreciate it. I didn't like it. And then it's just incredible. So a friend of mine, Barbara Rose, said to me, hey, there's going to be a little retreat on Saturday morning for the choir. Would you like to come? I just figured you'd like it. And they told us we could invite friends. God bless Barbara Rose, because I mean, because I wasn't a member of the choir, you know, so I go to this Saturday morning and it's 3 talks given by Father Gabriel Turetta, who is such an incredible priest.
Really?
He is my favorite preacher teacher of all time.
Wow.
And we've got a lot of good preachers.
Yeah.
So, but he is truly, you know, I have to say, he's just my favorite. Yeah. And so he knows it. He knows it. I've told him a million times. So anyway, he gives these talks, and I, you know, at the time I thought it was like what he taught us that changed my life. But years later, I realized that it was actually, yes, it was that, but it was also just a movement of the Holy Spirit in my life. Like the Lord chose to change my life that day. Oh, excuse me.
It's all right.
And it's funny, I'm not a huge crier, but these are the things that make me cry. So he talked to us about music and liturgy, because he was talking to the choir, and he was like, you know, what he was saying to the choir is like, what is our role as we are leading people in prayer and worship during the liturgy? And, gosh, I wish I had my notes actually, just because I would read them to you, but so good. I still have them. But he talked about, like we are like a boat, you know, that is like placed onto a rushing river. Like the liturgy it's happening already, but we are entering into it, and we're swept away into, you know. And I'm not going to do it justice, but there were so many things. One of the things he said was, as a, let's just, you know, whether you want to call it a choir or music ministry or whatever, if you are seeking to, what's the word that he used? Not cater to, but if you are seeking to attend to, that's what he said. Attend to the congregation, you are attending to the wrong audience. You are to be attending to the audience, the right audience, which is the Lord.
Preach.
Oh, so good. And anyway, it was as though a switch was flipped that morning. Wow. And all of a sudden, I got it. Yeah. And I'm so grateful, because I'm never going to be a theologian. Yeah. You know about me and books. Like I've got a stack of books you told me to read for you, so that you can synthesize them and tell them to me. I like to read. Yeah, so okay. I do read a book occasionally, but it's rare that I finish. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, and so I mean, I just feel like God is so good. He knows us so well, and he just knew that, like, that's how he needed to do it in my life. And so it was as though I really, a switch was flipped. And then from that point forward, and it hasn't changed, I've been walking on clouds. I've been floating. But what the result of all that was, like, I loved the Mass. Yeah. And I remember saying this many times to Matt in those first years after that, or, you know, months and years. I would say, I mean, I love the Mass now. And he's like, what? You always loved the Mass. And I would say, no, I wanted to. Yeah. I thought I did. I loved the Eucharist. Yeah. But I really didn't get it. And, you know, it's one of those things, you don't know what you don't have until you have it. Yeah. And that's where what you said earlier about all these people who have been through the changes and all this stuff, but they are there faithfully attending Mass every Sunday.
Yep.
I mean, I've said so many times since then, I have a heart for these people because I was that person, and I still have so long way to go, so much to learn. But I'm dying to learn more about the Mass because it's just something that has changed my life so drastically, and which is why I'm so grateful for our parish, because it all happened at our parish, and but yeah, so I just feel like so many people are faithfully attending Mass week after week, year after year, and they but they don't really understand what their role is. They know they're supposed to go, and they're probably like me, like they want to love it, but you do have this feeling, honestly, as a Catholic sometimes where you're like, I should love this, and I want to love it, but I don't feel like I'm connecting with it. You hear a lot of Catholics say, like,
Protestants feel the same way about the Bible. Like a lot of Protestants will say the same thing about the Bible. In fact, I'll tell you a story about my mom real quick. Yeah. Is that, she struggled with reading the Bible, and she knew she should love it. She was, married to a Baptist, and Baptists are very much about Bible reading and these kinds of things. And, she asked God to give her a love for the Bible. And she said, all right, God. And I love my mom. I mean, she's just such a godly lady. And she said, and I've used this with my kids, because this applies to the rosary too. This applies to anything that you think God wants you to love, but you just know deep down inside, you really don't love it. You kind of are doing it, but you don't really love it. Right. And you want to love it, but you just don't, It's probably how my wife feels about me sometimes. Just kidding. But
I want to love him, Lord.
Help me.
Help me love him.
I know he's a good man deep down.
Help me see what you see, Jesus.
I saw a Catholic guy from the Midwest, and he was talking about his kid. And he was like, help me to accept the son that you cannot change, or something like that. And that will not change. But my mom said that she made a commitment. She said, Lord, I will read 2 verses a day, no matter what. And
that's the thing.
She started
faithfulness.
super small, and God rewarded her. And now she's leading Bible studies. Now she loves to read the Bible. She's doing tons of stuff, teaching people the Bible, and it's that's where it starts, is like this faithfulness. And I think what's moving about your story too is sometimes God is faithful to us, even though we're not making like a conscious decision to be faithful to Him, like my mom did. It's like, you want to, at least how I hear your story is, you knew you should love the Mass and you were going, but it's like God kind of like, through the body of Christ, people grabbed you, put you in this, choir thing, and all of a sudden this light bulb goes on. Oh. And now your life is totally changed. It did the same thing with the Eucharist too, because your mom, somebody else, right, comes in and says, and I think sometimes Protestants don't understand what Catholics mean by grace coming through somebody other than Jesus, right? Like your parents using the role of their authority in your life and saying, you're going to go to this thing. Well, like they were Jesus to you, telling you what to do. Like you're going to go do this thing, and God uses the parents to spiritually guide you to where He wants you to be, and your life's changed. Yeah.
So much of it is just being present. Yeah. And that's why, I just think that as parents, a lot of it, and it doesn't always work out the way you want it to, but you still just have to put your kids in a place to, give them opportunities to encounter. I mean, it's so funny. Like anytime I was helping plan this big thing for the Eucharistic revival here in Cincinnati, and I
almost wore that T-shirt today, but then Lindsay was like, "You sure you're gonna wear that?" I was like, "It's a little casual." Yeah, you're right.
The pink one?
No, the blue one.
Mine's pink.
Yours is pink.
Yeah. Oh, because I was on staff. The staff ones were pink.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, but yeah. So, and as we were first starting to think about how we want to do it, and Matt said to me, it's all about helping them encounter Christ. Like, and that's all. And so, sometimes they go to Catholic youth summer camp, and it doesn't
click.
It does. They don't make the connection, but sometimes they go and it does. And, but we just have to keep putting them there, and it really is, it's not easy because your kids, number one, they have a million things pulling them in different directions. They have sports, they might have work, they have their friends, or they're lazy or whatever. And so you have to you have to force them a lot of times. And some people wouldn't agree with that approach, but I got to tell you, it sure worked for me because, God, we have to get our kids in front of the Lord so that he can do the work. And everything that we do is, we're just trying to support that and teach them and everything, but he can actually work in a way that is completely supernatural and outside of what we can do,
Well, and also I think, there's that cliche. I hate cliches because they're true, and nobody
then why hate it?
Yeah,
just
I know,
don't
right?
Fight it.
Yeah. It's just, Can't we just say it like really long and verbose so that it sounds novel instead of just,
That's your way
exactly.
and my way.
Yeah. But my brothers, my whole family is walking with the Lord. And, and a big part, all of our brothers will say the same thing, that we remember coming downstairs and seeing Dad with his Bible every morning. And all of us have said to some extent or another, we probably shouldn't read our Bibles on our phones and stuff because we want our kids to see us in front of the scriptures.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point.
And I think that's one of the big things. Even John Paul II talked about his dad as his first seminary education. And it was, I think the quote is he was the first seminary I attended was my dad. And his dad was just a devout prayer. And he would pray all the time. And
my grandfather too.
Yeah. And
my husband.
Yeah. And it's and I was, even when I first came into the church, the priest gave me a reflection on conscience for my first confession. And in the front fold, there was a dedication to his mother or grandmother, one of the two, whoever raised him. It was a priest who wrote it, and he was a Dominican now, and he gave a dedication. He said, the first, something to the effect of, the first teacher I had was my mother, who was only a third grade education, but prayed the rosary daily. And I saw her do it. And that was my first exposure to the life of a Christian. And I think we just underestimate that sometimes. But I wanted to ask you if it's okay if we take another detour real fast. So because of we're coming back to the pro-life stuff, do you feel like your story gives you the ability to, I don't know, be more vocal about the pro-life movement? Because the reason why I wanted to ask this is a lot of times people are like, that's a touchy subject, don't talk about that, or whatever. But I've found, even just knowing your story, I have the ability to now speak more about pro-life stuff because it's no, I know somebody who changed my life. And if her mom had not listened to her husband or, boyfriend at the time, or gone and prayed in that church, sure, God could have brought somebody else along, but that's not how he chose to do it. But what are some of the ways that you feel like your testimony has uniquely equipped you for this? Because you went to the pro-life rally and you ended up with your story in the Federalist, which, I'll put a link in this YouTube video for people to actually read. But what is that like for you as far as, knowing that this is your story? Because it's a pretty crazy story.
Well, it's funny when that guy was walking around talking, he was really talking to teens. But I didn't know at the time that that's really, I think, who he was seeking out. But I thought, and this would have never happened if I didn't have this story. I just thought here's a guy who's trying to get a story, and I have a pretty good one. And so I actually he walked away, and then I was like, should I, but
Do you want any more coffee?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I sought him out and I said, I was my mom's crisis pregnancy. I can, and he was like, would you want to be interviewed? I'm like, sure. So I wouldn't have done that. But yeah, there have been, I would definitely say that has changed over the years for me, in recent years. And I think issue 1, the
Ohio bill.
Right. That really got me more, when we knew that was coming down the pike, it was like, okay. It was something in me was like, we got to kick it into gear now. And so, that was a whole nother crazy way that the Lord worked. Oh my gosh. Just so many.
What do you mean?
Well, so, Matt and I had never really been involved in pro-life.
No way.
Stuff. No, but my family always was.
Yeah, that's why I'm surprised.
And so, I mean, I'm trying to think, like, were there things I was involved? But we've moved around a lot.
Yeah.
We lived outside the country. Matt was in a very intense season of studies.
Yep.
So he needed me to just be the backbone, you know? And so anyway, because I remember saying to him when we were living in Italy, I'm like, I feel like we should be doing pro-life work. And he's like, we need you here right now. Like and he said in a very wise and thoughtful and kind way, he goes, there will come a time where you will be able to, the Lord will let you use your gifts outside of the home. And at that time will come, but right now we really need you here. Otherwise, he was like, this doesn't work without you. And so it was great because it was, I needed to hear it. Mm-hmm. And it was like I wish more husbands would actually be that clear, So anyway, it was good. And through the years, I wanted to do pro-life work, but it wasn't until issue 1 was coming up for, a vote that I was like, I need to help with this. And Matt and I went to a pro-life, a Respect Life group meeting at St. Gertrude. They were reviving. St. Gertrude has always had one, but there were certain things they would do, like 40 Days for Life. But other than that, it was a bit dormant. Like it wasn't very active.
Okay.
Issue 1 comes up. Father Joachim's like, we're going to revive this thing. We go to this meeting and it's like, okay, this thing is coming down the pike. Laura Streetman came to our meeting, who's the executive director of Cincinnati Right to Life, who's become a dear, dear friend. And so at that meeting, I met Philip Williamson. Yeah. I'm trying to remember if I have this right.
Also a convert. I met Brenna Lewis.
Yeah. And
we're the godparents for
get out.
One of their kids. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What's his name again? Sebastian. There we go. Listen, I'm the godfather. Okay. I can't remember my own kid's names.
I know. What's his birthday? No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, I met them and Laura said, you guys have some amazing people here. Like you should really have like a town hall meeting, or I think it was not a town hall meeting. Sorry. What was it? Where you have like a panel.
Yeah.
A panel discussion.
Oh, and that's when your mom came, right?
Well, so then it just so happened my mom, who worked for 20 years for a pro-life organization in Dallas.
Yeah.
And she has a pro-life show, a radio show in Dallas. It just so happened there was a lot that was going on with her, this organization that she worked for. It was time for her to step out. She retired and so she was already scheduled to come and visit us. But because she was no longer working, I said, Mom, why don't you come for longer?
Yeah.
You have more time. And so she ended up coming for like 3 weeks to stay with us. And so just so happened, we already had this panel discussion planned. She was going to be here. So I said, would you want to be on this panel? Wow. So it ended up being my mom, Philip, and Brenna on this panel that we did at St. Gertrude to talk about issue 1. And my mom, it's so crazy because she has a radio show about pro-life issues. She's always educating everybody. Yeah. And she does talk about her story, but she had never told her story in front of a live audience.
Wow.
Had no idea about this. I was the MC for this event. Were you even here? You weren't here yet.
We weren't here yet, but I heard about this event.
Yeah. So I was the MC. So, I introduced everybody, sat down in the front row. My mom begins to tell this story, she gets emotional because she's never done it live.
Wow.
And I'm getting emotional, and it had never hit either one of us this way, really. And so
the story of basically how she
almost aborted me. And nobody knew. All these people from St. Gertrude were there. None of them knew that. They may have known, some of them may have known she was my mom, but they didn't know that she was talking about me. And so, I mean, really, I'll never forget when she said, she tells the whole story, and then she says, and that little girl is Cristina. And there was just a gasp like in the room. And I'll also never forget Craig Babcock, who's so sweet, comes and just literally put his forehead on my forehead. And he said, I'm so happy you're here, but it was so moving. Yeah. And so that whole thing happened. And then Philip, I was like, we got to educate people on this legal language in this bill because it was so deceptive and, and so they were lumping all this other bad stuff in with it. And I'm like, we got the most brilliant lawyer. Yeah. And he is, he's pro-life. And so, I said, let's make a video of you, explaining the language. Yeah. Breaking it down for people. And so we ended up, just crazy. Have I ever been involved in any kind of video productions? Heck no. But we just, and then I think Laura connected us with this guy, Corey, who's awesome. He's not Catholic, but man, did we hit it off. And he ended up doing the video, and we're, high-rise building. Yep. We're in the conference room of his. We were hauling in all this equipment. They don't know what's going on. Yeah. And that's where we filmed it. Wow. And then that video ended up being used for training all over Cincinnati or all over the state so that people could understand the language. And then we filmed some reels and all,
like social media stuff,
social media clips and such. And so anyway, just so many amazing things happened, but I ended up being involved in just getting the large signs. What do you call those things? The billboard size signs put all over the city.
Wow. I didn't know you got involved. Man, you really jumped in head first.
I jumped in head first, and I it was so crazy. All of us who were involved, Brenna, Lisa Campbell.
She had some crazy stories,
Patty
by the
Hook.
way.
I could go on and on.
Brenna tell you some of the crazy stuff that happened to her while she was putting out signs and stuff?
Oh, yeah, she did, actually.
That was wild.
Yeah. It was, they were after us, and they were, people would run over signs. They would,
Well, I'm talking about the spiritual side of stuff. Did she tell you any of that?
I don't remember.
We'll have Brenna on, but basically this is what happened. That was one of the first ways. I'm going to tell. It's a crazy story.
Okay, tell the story.
She'll come on and she'll be like, "Hey, you kind of embellished a little bit." I'm like, "It's all right. It was for ratings." But no, what happened is that she told us what was going on because we had just moved to the area when all of that stuff was going on. I was like, "Oh my word!" We moved here, and now it's like, gosh, we're about to become this. For those that don't know, Issue 1 basically tried to enshrine, actually successfully enshrine basically into the Constitution that you could have an abortion. And there was
the state.
Yeah, at the state level. And not the American Constitution, the Ohio one. And after Roe v. Wade fell, the pro-choice movement basically started pushing all of these amendments in different state constitutions, and we were one of them. And our mutual friend Brenna told us that she was going out, putting out signs, and she said, yeah, spiritual warfare is really ramping up. And we were like, what are you talking about? She was like, well, I was out putting out signs, and it was getting late, and it was dark, and I was on this back road, and I was the only car on the road, and I thought, I'm going to put one more sign down over at this area. I'm going to go check it out. And then the next time she checks in her rearview mirror, she sees a car. And she could have sworn there was no way that car could have come on or whatever, but she didn't think anything of it. Maybe he got off of some back road or whatever, and now he's behind her. And she feels like he's following her. And she suddenly feels like there's a demonic thing happening. And so she says, if you're a demon, flash your lights at me.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Did you hear about this? And she paused. And then a few seconds later, the car flashed its lights at her, and she was like, I'm going home.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, you like,
and
when
that
you get,
girl was driving signs all over with her little kids.
Wow.
And I mean, they would either like she and her husband Kyle would either
Yeah.
take turns or they would just put the kids in the car and they
Yeah.
were driving signs all over town. And so I was more involved with like getting them. Well, I was distributing them, but like particularly getting them on the campuses of parishes and schools. And I can tell you which Catholic schools did put them up, and I can tell you which Catholic schools didn't put them up. You know, and so anyway, but
you want me to put links in the description?
yeah. But anyway, I had some tough conversations with like one pastor in particular, and so it was crazy, but it was so intense. And I knew, I remember thinking like, I can't do this forever. This is crazy.
Yeah.
But I knew I was doing something I needed to do at the time. But I remember thinking like, well, not so much, but like, am I going to be able to keep going with this? Because my mom has devoted her whole life after raising a family to saving women and children from crisis, you know, from abortion. And so, and I remember thinking, wow, this is really consuming. And so after issue 1 passed, and it was like, okay, we've got a lot more to do here. Like, it was like, this isn't the end. Like we have so much to do. And I was helping kind of run the Respect Life group at St. Gertrude, and we were very active. And I remember thinking, I don't think I can keep going because it is really consuming and I want to do it, but I don't think I'm called to do it actually, which made me really sad. And I remember just crying, and I called my mom and I said, Mom, I don't think I can keep doing this. And she said, no, she said, you can't, because it's got to be your thing. It's got to be your one thing.
Wow.
And you have a lot of things
Yeah.
and a lot of irons in the fire. And she's like, it's okay. Like God will provide. And so I haven't been involved, as involved in it. I help Laura in whatever ways I can. Like I helped her. They actually just leased a property on Auburn Ave, just doors down from Planned Parenthood, which was huge. I was able to help her with that lease. So I try to help in the ways that I can, but I can't really do like pro-life work full time, which is tough.
I do think though that it's cool. It's a beautiful story though, because it shows that even though your testimony is a powerful pro-life testimony, one of the reasons why every life matters is because you don't know what God's going to do with that life, and we as human beings would say, oh, well, you have this crazy crisis pregnancy testimony. Surely you're but you're not. God's using you in different ways. And I think one of the ways he's using you, which I thought I'd like to hear your thoughts as we kind of wrap up here, is, like you're an incredible evangelist, in my opinion, because, I kind of have to say that, you're my spiritual director, you're my confirmation
I require
sponsor.
you to say it.
I signed a contract before I came into the church. She will be the evangelist in the world. But you are, I just think about all the Protestant friends that have these stereotypes of Catholics, oh, they just care about themselves. They're like, they just go to mass. They don't care about anybody else. And they don't even share the gospel. That's the charge that people leverage. But I'm like, well, you haven't met Cristina. So like, what are some of the things that you think Catholics, can learn from you? And because evangelism is not a theology degree. It really comes with experience. Like, what are some of the things that prompted you to, you have us over because we have questions about the Catholic faith, and we end up being at your house till like midnight talking to you and Matt.
I think it was more like 1:30, but anyway.
Our kids were begging to leave because they were exhausted. And we were like, listen, your souls are on the line, okay? But what are some of the signs that what are some of the strategies that you, I don't want to say strategies, that feels like it's contrived.
I know where you're going with this.
But you know what I mean? How do Catholics evangelize?
Well, okay, so actually when you asked me about how my story, does it help me to be able to spread the pro-life message or whatever? It does help me, and this kind of ties in with what you're asking. An example that I will give you is that what was it? Laura Streetman was coming to pick up a key, I believe, at my office. And it turns out that our receptionist, who's a lovely person. Her sister and Laura are very close friends, but the receptionist is not pro-life at all. But the sister is, of course. And so anyway, so they see each other. They're like, oh my gosh, how are you? They talk. And then then when the receptionist tells me, I'm like, well, I said, do you know what Laura does? And she goes, oh yeah. She goes, you know what? And I said, well, we just leased this space down the road from Planned Parenthood. And she goes, well, that's what I love, because, I think people should have a choice. Like, they can go to Cincinnati Right to Life if they want to keep their baby, right, and they can go to Planned Parenthood if they don't, And this was her view. And I didn't, and I'm thinking, these are those moments where you're like in your head, come Holy Spirit, like, I need to work with this woman. I don't want to, but so I didn't say anything in the moment, which is a little bit unlike me. I mean, Laura would have. Laura is probably like she's the only person more vocal than me about her faith, about what she believes. And she's amazing. I've seen her in Home Depot evangelizing the lady behind the desk. It's incredible about life issues. So anyway, so I didn't say anything, but then later I sent her a message. And I felt like, you know what? Like, I have something personal to share that is so powerful, because it's not like, let me talk about these other people who are, it's like, no, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
If the Lord hadn't intervened, if my father, and actually I've come to realize that, like, I've thought about what led to my birth, like what led to me not being aborted. And I think, it had a lot to do with my parents, my dad's family, my dad's parents, the way that he was raised, and my dad being a good man. He wasn't perfect. He had made mistakes, but he was willing to step in and really save my life. And so, our parenting has far-reaching effects, and that was my grandparents. But anyway, so I was willing to just go and say to her, hey, I just wanted to tell you that, like, this is a very personal thing for me, and here's why. And so, it's not just a choice. It's actually, there are human lives at stake here. And I don't remember what all I wrote to her, but I did. And I felt like it really does give me like kind of an ability to speak on a personal level that not everybody can do. Yeah. And of course, that's one of the reasons my mom has been so powerful. The Lord has used her so powerfully in this, pro-life, apostolate of hers. But anyway, I guess to answer your other question, yeah, I mean, I really feel like we just need to be vocal and be open for the love of others. Gosh, I just said this to someone. So Arthur Brooks, who, teaches at Harvard, he teaches the most.
What is he? Is he a psychologist or something?
I've
heard that name.
He's a professor, and he teaches in I don't remember if he's a psychologist. He might be, but he is. He teaches the most popular course at Harvard, and it's in the business school, and it's a course on happiness. And he's a devout Catholic. I believe he's a supernumerary in Opus Dei. And I heard him speak last summer at a conference, and it was really the whole talk was about evangelization. And he said that no matter, I mean, he has written tons of books. He speaks all over the place. Yeah. And he said, no, whether I'm giving a course or giving a talk or whatever I'm doing in front of a crowd, within 5 minutes of the beginning of the talk, everyone in the audience knows how that my Catholic faith is the most important thing in my life. Within 5 minutes. And honestly, I'm kind of like that. Yeah. But it was, I'm kind of naturally that way. However, it just gave me like a boost. It was like just affirmation to like dig into that. Like, don't be afraid to just tell people, because the thing is, we all have a story to share about how the Lord has worked in our lives. So it's not, prideful, or, I was just talking to, that's what it was. I was just talking to a friend earlier who's, he was a professor at the seminary with Matt, and he's retiring. And Arthur Brooks talks about crystallized wisdom.
Yeah.
And he didn't come up with that term, but it's over all these years. It's not like book smarts or knowledge. It's like, no, this is wisdom gained over decades of living, perhaps being a family man, in a career, all these things. And so you've gained all this experience that is ends up giving you this crystallized wisdom. And and what I said to this friend who is retiring, I said, don't be afraid to share it. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think be very aware that the Holy Spirit is going to provide little openings and opportunities for you to share your crystallized wisdom, and the world needs what you have to share.
Right.
And so anyway, that's how
I know somebody with a long form podcast where you could share that. I'm just kidding.
Good point. True. Yeah. But I just always feel like people are like, so it's like, they don't know, they don't mean for it to be a false humility, and it's not necessarily a false humility, but it's a humility that actually can be a stumbling block. Yeah. Because the fact of the matter is, we have to be willing to talk about the Lord's hand and movement in our life.
Yep.
We all have those stories.
Yeah.
Why are we not sharing them?
Right.
So I share them all the time. I love it. I'm like, man.
Well, and I think it's too that's what's so attractive too, is that there's a joy that you have that I think oftentimes, it's like that meme for Catholics, like the devil comes to bring suffering and the Catholic says, joke's on you, we're into that, and so like a lot of times I think, I like it because the Catholic faith does seem to have a lot of resources for the more melancholy, I guess you would say, and I find a lot of beauty in that. But
we're okay with the fact that we're going to suffer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, and I will just say, John Paul II's encyclical on human suffering is one of the. It is true that it is one of the best responses to the issue of human suffering and the problem of evil, and how Christianity specifically responds to that, and specifically Catholic Christianity. And I don't mean to be combative, but the Catholic Church does have the best response to that problem.
Absolutely.
And so that was because when I was in seminary, that was like one of the topics I loved to study, was like the problem of evil. If there's a good God, why does all this bad stuff happen? And the fact that there's an institution out there with answers and writers like John Paul II is really impressive. But the thing I was going to say, too, on the note of sharing your story, one of the things that's hard for me sometimes as a convert is a lot of times people just chalk it up to like psychological, like, oh, you deconstructed and now you've rebuilt, from the pieces of your shambles. Have you heard that term? Like being deconstructed or whatever. And it's really not. I mean, it really, I've told people this before when we talk about our testimony. It's like, I want every one of my family members or friends to experience confession now.
That's what it's all about. Like we have something amazing. That
the other churches do not have.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that I have very beloved Protestant friends, and if they were to listen to this, you know how much I love you.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I just have this feeling a lot of the time of like, because some of them have gone through really hard suffering, and I'm like, oh man, like what you have is kind of bare bones. And, I mean, and it's just what the Catholic Church offers is just so rich. And the thing is that, again, it's not prideful to say that, because it's not us. It's what God left us. Christ left us this blueprint and these tools and these sacraments and these gifts and all this stuff that, I mean, like, he wanted us to have them. He knew we were going, this is what I was saying, he knew we were going to need them. Yeah. We were going to need all this stuff. Yeah. And then, so to then just be like, well, we're going to block out all of that and just focus on scriptures where did you get the scriptures, first of all? Right. And he said he was never going to leave us. Well,
Mm-hmm.
he meant more than just the scriptures,
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing, when I was growing up, especially, and I think a lot of Christians can relate to this, if they grew up in like a godly kind of, morally sanitary environment, let's say, where, you're not like, you're not going out doing drugs, you're not doing any of this, like everybody's kind of straight laced, and you don't have this crazy conversion story. You just always listen to your parents, by and large. They might disagree with that. I know my parents would, but you listened to their wisdom and you tried to follow Christ, and you wanted to be a godly kid, right? Or a godly Christian as you grew up. And you'd hear this story of this guy, who's in drugs or whatever, and God just reaches out. And I can remember, my brother and others of us kind of sitting there going like, I wish I could experience God's mercy and grace that way. And when you, as a Protestant, have this experience of, well, I've prayed the prayer, all my sins are forgiven. You're under the impression that there's no more mercy to be experienced. There's no more grace to be experienced because you've already experienced it. You're saved. You're on your way to the heavenly kingdom. Everything's going to be fine. And sure, you may have moments of where you experience the love of God. You may have experiences where you experience the providence of God. But when you go into that confessional, and after 35 years plus, and you've never been in the confessional before in your life, or maybe you're a Catholic who's just not gone in a long time, you go in there and you suddenly start to say the sins that you've committed, and you realize they've been just weighing on you for years.
Yeah.
And you realize, I really am a wretch. And then you hear those words of absolution. That is the idea of a Protestant wanting a conversion experience. It's like you can actually have that conversion experience in the confessional through the sacraments.
Did you hear Jonathan Rumi talk about his experience of confession?
No.
And how, Oh, you got to hear it. I mean, he says like something almost physiological happens.
Yeah,
like it's
100%.
You're different when you walk out. And then something that came to mind when you were talking about that as well is, the writings of the saints. I mean, for me, there's a book called 33 Days to Merciful Love written by Father Michael Gately. And it's sort of like the theology of St. Therese coupled with divine mercy, St. Faustina. And that changed my life. That was more recent in the last maybe 4 years or something. And it was just like, wow, I didn't realize that I didn't get it. Like whenever I would mess up, the example I always give is that this came after I read that book, and you read it in a group and you watch these videos of Father Michael talking about it, and it really drives it home because he's just he's just so funny. He's just a very humble, kind of goofy guy. And like the what hits the fan while he's filming. And so he has to rely on divine mercy as it's happening. You would love it. But anyway, and so so after I went through this, a friend of mine, the same person who explained Alpha to me, her mother passed away, and I said something to her, and I actually was trying to help her, but I hurt her, and I didn't mean to hurt her.
Oops.
Yeah, but and I just said something that I should have said at a different time, not when she had just lost her mom. But and so thanks be to God, this friend of mine is so wonderful. She comes to me and she says, Chrissy, so why did you feel you needed to say that to me at that time? I mean, like, what kind of wonderful friend actually
that's a good
talks
friend.
to you about this instead of just like writing you off or being mad at you and not saying anything? She just came to me in love but directly, and so I just said, you're right. Like, well, I shouldn't have said that at that time. And Jenny, I honestly wanted to help you, but I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. And I just told her how I felt, and I really was so sad and sorry. And then she said, Chrissy, we are good. I forgive you. Because I asked your forgiveness, and she said, I forgive you, and we're good, and I love you. And that was it. Okay. Before reading that book, on the thought of Faustina and Therese, I would have cried for days and I would have beat myself up and I would have, and which is, you realize is so prideful to be like, oh, I messed up. Like I'm not perfect, but I didn't get it. And so after that, I realized, oh, like all we do when we mess up is we ask for forgiveness and then we just look up to Jesus because yes, we are little and we are broken and we are in need of a savior. And then he is the one who lifts us up, but his mercy is always right there. Why are we wallowing?
And it's amazing. That's one of the things I would say too. If somebody has stereotypical beliefs of, Catholics being like, very cold and austere and not penetrating the heart, it's like, just go read some of the saints about the love of God. Wow. I mean, they were produced by the Catholic Church, by the sacraments, by all of the things that seem so odd to the person outside of the church walls. And I think that's really important because, you do have like all these, you do have bad Catholic church leaders and stuff that, beat people up because they did the wrong thing or whatever. And you have this medieval kind of church that everybody always props up as like, see all the evil that this does or whatever. But that same church also produced like the most beautiful hymns from Thomas Aquinas or like the Divine Mercy or like these things are only known to the world because they sit on a foundation called the church. Like, and Protestants and Catholics alike benefit from them. And, even, do you know who Brother Lawrence is? Have you ever heard of him? Lots of Protestants like to talk about Brother Lawrence. And they miss the fact that he would spend time in adoration,
That's why he was who he was.
Right. And like, this idea of like the presence of God in their life. And so, but anyway, I think that pretty much wraps us up unless you have something else you want to say, but I see Lindsay over there like doing stuff. Oh, you have to go to the restroom? So I guess that means
I do. The only thing I was going to talk about was Sally, actually, because that.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But we don't have to.
You want to talk about Sally? I mean, we have time. We can keep going. I just didn't want to keep.
If I just slide out.
Yeah, that's fine. You can slide out and we can keep talking.
Come back and I'm gonna go.
Yeah. So tell me about Sally though. Like, what were we going to say there?
Oh no, just that. So when we were living in Italy, there was a woman who, the reason I bring her up is just because so she was an English poet who had married an Italian and she had a little girl and she wanted friends for her daughter. And so she was putting out these little flyers to try to like meet other women. And somebody gave it to me and our daughters were just about the same age. So we became friends. She would come to the house and the girls would play and we would sit there. But this woman was an anti-Catholic, atheist.
Oh, wow.
Feminist, like all the basically the opposite of me in every way. And we just didn't have much in common at all. And we would sit and we would just talk and I would be folding laundry and making dinner and changing diapers and all. I mean, my life went on, but she was there and we would chat. And one funny thing that happened was when Obama was elected, I was like a social media warrior trying to get this guy not elected, right? And so then when he was elected, I was devastated. And she called me and she said, her daughter's name was Chelia. Chell and I are having an Obama party. Do you want to come over? And she said later that she thought that, like it would just be fun. She didn't think it would be offensive for her to ask me that.
It's just funny. I would love to have been there when you got invited to an Obama party.
Oh yeah. It was not good. So what I said to her was, never mention that word to me again. And so we hung up and both of us, she says that she was like, I'm done with these people. Like we're not. And I'm sure that I was kind of like, why am I even friends with, with her? And, but she was like, I don't want my daughter around these people. And so anyway, but thankfully, like I called her, and I just pretended nothing happened the next day. And then our friendship went on and she ended up, long story short, at a certain point, she told me that she all of a sudden realized she believed in God.
Oh, wow.
And then she...
was this because of conversations you guys had?
Well, no, what I was going to say is that... I mean, I didn't filter. This is the thing. I don't filter myself.
Yeah, that's true.
I just am who I am.
Yeah.
And so kind of like Arthur Brooks, like in my real estate job, you pretty much know I'm Catholic within within an hour of meeting me. Yeah. And I have Protestant friends, and I tell them about Saint Therese, and I tell them about Divine Mercy. And I'm not like in your face, but I'm just like, I'm not going to filter. This is what's happening in my heart, in my life. So anyway, so Sally, I always joke that like she converted to the Catholic faith despite our friendship, because, I probably wasn't, I mean, I was like, I was probably hard to take as an atheist in a way,
Absolutely.
In fact, I said to her when her father died, who was a staunch atheist till he died, I said, and I wasn't trying to be insensitive, but I guess I was just curious, like, what is it like when an atheist dies, like for you who are left behind, who didn't believe that there was an afterlife, and certainly didn't believe in God, and like really rejected God in every way. And she says it, so she ends up writing a book about her conversion. When she told me she believed in God, she said, "Don't get excited. I'm not a Christian, and I'm certainly never going to be a Catholic." And I just played it cool, because I was like, I'm not, okay, well, keep me posted,
Right.
I didn't want to like make a move or say anything that would turn her off. And then, and so then she ends up having this correspondence with this priest, and asked him a lot of questions about the Catholic faith, because she was very bitter about the Catholic faith because of some of the abuse and stuff like that. Like, and she's like, I really like this guy. Like, how could he be a Catholic?
Yeah.
But she had 2 or 3 very incredible mystical experiences of the Lord, where she felt him sitting next to her, or there was another time that she was just crying and crying, and her tears just dried, and she knew that the Lord was in the room with her.
Wow.
And so anyway, she ended up becoming Catholic. I'm her confirmation sponsor. We are dear friends, we're close friends to this day. But, in that case, it wasn't so much me sharing my faith with her, or like love of the Lord. It was more just me being who I was.
Yeah.
Like, and she
and
thought
also not obfuscating your faith. Like,
no.
it's almost like the way I would describe it is like, you're not afraid to let it leak, I guess you would say, like,
Not at all.
like, and I think sometimes today, everybody's supposed to be like, okay, well, you have your belief and I have mine, and let's just be friends. We don't want to talk about where the differences lie, but then they go to the internet to hear conversations like this, because this is where they can find out what other people actually think.
Right. Right.
But anyway, so you basically didn't get in her face. You didn't do any of that.
No, I didn't at all. But and she thought we were all weird, because she was surrounded by a community of devout Catholic women, because all our husbands were studying in Rome, and we all lived in this town, and here she is. She just meets friends, and they're all devout Catholics. And she sometimes thought that we treated God like Santa Claus, because people would be like, "Oh my gosh, pray that I make this train," or whatever. Yeah. And she says that all of that in the book. But I do think, that obviously, like, the Lord was using all these relationships in her life, but he really, it was, I always say about Sally, it was completely transformational. Like, when she became Catholic, she was completely transformed, and yet completely fully herself still. She's got the same personality. But it was like, and I remember her saying leading up to her confirmation, and really, I have to give a plug for her book, only because
What's it called?
Story is so cool. Night's Bright Darkness.
Okay, we'll put
Ignatius
we'll
Press.
put that link in the description.
Yeah, I mean, I reads a little bit, parts of it like a John Grisham novel, because of what happened the day that she was confirmed. But leading up to it, she would say to me, I know I have to assent to everything in the Apostles' Creed. And one of the only things that she was having a hard time with was the issue of homosexuality, the church's teaching on homosexuality, because she had such a personal connection with friends who were homosexual, and she, but by the time she she made her confirmation. I mean, I literally stood there with my hand on her shoulder, and she assented to all of it with her whole heart. It was really beautiful. But the day she was supposed to be confirmed in Rome, there was
So this all happened during sorry, not to interrupt, but
no, that's okay.
this all happened while you guys were
While
in
we
Rome,
were living in
during
Rome, and
the
I was
Angelicum and
very
all that
pregnant with Andrew.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and I wasn't feeling well, and I almost missed it. But thankfully,
but you were so you were at her confirmation,
right? So there was a cardinal, a very elderly cardinal, who was going to confirm her, or bring her into the church, and it was going to be at the Angelicum, but that day in Rome there were riots, and so there were literally like cars like on fire.
Oh,
and
my word!
Just police everywhere, craziness all over the city, and so the cardinal wasn't going to be able to get to the Angelicum. It wasn't safe for him, or he was elderly too. So anyway, and I think maybe like the transportation was shut down.
Okay.
You couldn't really drive through the streets. And so and Sally's husband to this day isn't Catholic, but he was great. Like, he was there and everything. And I remember him being like, this is happening. Like, you're going to be, which is crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah. Fabio. And so we were like, well, I guess we're going to have to go to him. So we literally just marched ourselves across Rome to the Vatican.
Wow. So hold on a second. So her husband's name is Fabio?
Yes.
That is
Fabio.
That is amazing. Like, this is like movie level material. You know what I mean?
I'm telling you, it's a good
like
book.
Literally, you've got like fire, the city's on fire, and Fabio, her husband, who's not a Catholic, is going to lead the way to her confirmation.
Yes, and you're
pregnant, walking.
I'm super pregnant, waddling the whole way, and we're like passing these cars that are on fire, and all this craziness. And then the other thing is, it's supposed to be good luck in Italy if a bird poops on you, and there was like this big what do you call it? All these
Opening
birds.
or
what do you call like a big group of birds? Flock. Thank you. A flock of birds overhead. And there was a big group of us, walking to the Vatican for her confirmation. And all of us got pooped on except Fabio, which is really sort of weird. We're not sure what it means to this day. But anyway, so we get there, and then she's in this, what's the name of that chapel? It's kind of a famous chapel. It's all marble. It's very beautiful. And I sang the Anima Christi.
Wow.
And she was confirmed, and the rest is history. But she wrote this book, and she's written several books.
Okay.
But
what's the one that's about her testimony again? What's it called?
Night's Bright Darkness.
Okay.
Yeah, and then she just recently wrote the Mary Pages, but she's just a beautiful, devout, amazing Catholic woman now, and
that's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah. Like, and the fact
I
that
never would have thought in a million years.
Wow. Well, and hearing her story and the fact that you were her confirmation sponsor makes me feel better about you being my spiritual director. So
I am completely unqualified.
But the one thing I do want to, on a serious note, that I think is important, I had a friend reach out to me and ask, like, I heard you're Catholic. It's kind of weird. Like, if you were a seminary student in a small seminary and then you become Catholic, like all of a sudden, like every now and then you just get a text message from somebody you haven't talked to in 10 years. Hey, I heard you're Catholic. There's a lot of questions I have at that point, like, well, who are you talking to? And like, where,
right.
Like, was it just from posts on social media, or, like,
why do you care?
Yeah, exactly. Like, we haven't talked in years,
Yeah.
And I shared our testimony with him, and we had some providential things happen for sure that definitely made us go, whoa, like, just connecting with you, like being in an area where there were other converts from my seminary that had just happened to be here, other things like that. But one of my friends, one particular thing, like Lindsay's friend had a dream, and I brought that up, and he said, it's interesting that a mystical experience is ultimately what pushed you over. And it's like, I think that's, like what she had mystical experiences and stuff, but she still had this hang up, with like with some teaching in the church. And I can tell you, as the person who actually swam the Tiber, The mystical experience is not that God sends to you, is not necessarily the thing that gets you across to the other side.
Right.
Because you can still chalk that up to just like, whatever, you know? But what's interesting, especially with atheists, if they just say, yeah, I was sitting there, like what Sally experienced, you know, those experiences map onto both Protestant and Catholic conversion stories, where they'll say, yeah, I had a moment. Like I heard one story of an atheist who said he was angry at God, and he was like, you know, I just want you to, you know, prove to me that you're real. And he slammed his fist down on the table, and his Bible fell open to, like, you know, those who call on the name of the Lord shall be heard, you know, like kind of a thing. And you could chalk that up to like random, but no Christian looks at that experience and says, dude, God wasn't reaching out to you. You know, he wasn't trying to move your heart or mind or any of that kind of stuff. Just throw that in the bin and just read a couple more theology books and get your mind up to speed. I think that people have to understand that the mystical experience, like we believe that God actually does work in somebody's life, but you still have to have the submission aspect, and you have to submit after the experience is over with no guarantee that it'll happen ever again. And I think that people miss that sometimes with our conversion stories. They think that, oh, well, you know, he just had some sort of unverifiable, or she had some unverifiable mystical subjective experience. And so it's not really that she had good reasons to convert, or he had good reasons to convert. It's like, well, no, like the whole mystical experience, whether you're an atheist, a Protestant who investigates the church, or just somebody who's never heard of the church before. Like the mystical experience is what gets you to investigate.
Yeah. It's all very mysterious because on one hand, faith is a gift.
Yes.
On the other hand, God does not work outside of our will, which I know not every Protestant believes about, free will, but it's true.
It is.
And and so, I mean, it's very mysterious, and, but he is pursuing us, and in our deepest hearts, we have a longing, we have a need, and we want that. And so, I mean, I remember my uncle, thankfully, because he died pretty suddenly, my mom's brother, he had come to like know and love the Lord by the end of his life. But for many, many years, he would say, I know you do, and I want to, but I don't have it. And actually, my father-in-law, who I adored, and I'll start crying if I talk about him, when he passed away, he knew that he told us he was dying on Thanksgiving, and he died the next morning, which was crazy. And Matt said to him, Dad, do you want me to call a priest? Because this guy used to be a catechist. He was a Knight of Columbus. But he felt we still don't know why, but he left the church many, many years ago and never came back, and, left his faith altogether. And when Matt said, would you like me to call a priest? He said, no, he said, thank you. I know that means a lot to you. And, as for me, he said, all I know is that I don't know. And I think that's a window. I think that's just a window that he didn't say, like, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't, that's hogwash. He didn't say anything like that. He just said, I don't know. And I just think that I really believe God can use that.
Oh, yeah.
And I just pray that, that he made himself, and I do believe that God at the end of our lives makes himself very known and very present to us, to where it's just irresistible. We can't resist him. Yeah. That's my hope and my prayer.
Well, and it still comes down to, like, it's still, when you come into the church, I think sometimes Protestants don't realize how much of a event it is. And like you have been preparing to like come in, and like you're standing there, and like you're going to be if you're coming into the church like we did, we didn't come in at Easter, we came in at Christmas, well, these converts now are going to receive the Eucharist first, like there's like 500 people behind you, like, and even if it's a small church, like, we've told you we were at Father Kirby's church, there, like, it's still a beautiful thing when people come in a small church, and it's very clear that they were very intentional about coming into the church. And I think that's where it's like you say, you know, God, I tell people, you know, God always moves first, but you still have to choose. And that's scary, you know, like, because there is stuff, you know, when I first was coming into the church, there were things like about Mary that I was like, okay, like, I know that this is weird and I don't really understand it, but the Eucharist, if that's true, you know,
if that's true, then to whom else shall we go?
Exactly.
I mean, it's you.
Oh yeah. And then you realize, like, no matter who you are, whether it's Sally and the homosexual thing or me with the Mary stuff, there is going to be something that you are going to have to trust God with to work out once you get there. It's not that you have objections necessarily or whatever, because I think that Christ softens us with his presence and with these mystical experiences, and that makes it possible for our will to be open to move towards what he wants us to do. But it's not, mystical experiences don't convert you. And that is true throughout all the scriptures. Like Jesus literally in John does all these miracles and people still doubt. And like even the parents of the blind guy are like, yeah, our son was blind. He can see now, but we don't know about this Jesus fellow, you know, and can we leave now? You know?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's like Jesus literally goes up into heaven and John says, and some doubted. So like, you know, the will is a stubborn thing and it doesn't suddenly like go away when you're becoming Catholic, especially when you're going to have to lose so much. But as your husband said, you'll gain so much more.
You'll gain so much more. But it does help.
Yes.
And it does, these mystical experiences. And that's the same thing we tell our kids about, like, you know, big retreat experiences, like those highs.
Yeah.
They really do help sort of carry you through the times when, you know, you're not feeling it.
Yeah.
Because our feelings are just not always going to be there. But we do, God does give us those gifts of those, you know, big moments. And I mean, it is actually really hard not to just feel like we're living in a constant state of that at St. Gertrude. And,
oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, it's just one big high. I mean, but that's why I'm so just, I mean, I talk to every pastor we've had about this, you know, we have to teach people about the importance of how we worship, you know, and the Mass and what is our role? What are we doing when we're there? And just to help clarify, because for me, it was just like that, like tweaking of my understanding. Wow. It's just like the scales were removed from my eyes. And now it's like, oh, my heart just jumps within my chest when I'm in Mass, you know? And, I mean, we're so blessed as Catholics, you know? And so
that's a great note to end on. So Christina, thank you for coming on, and thank you for
thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And we'll have to have you come back and we'll have to talk more about the Pope, because you're an expert on that. So. All right.
Not so much. I'm excited. I'm excited about the guy.
I am very excited about him, actually.
Our Holy
So
Father.
I would love to have you over and just talk about random Catholic stuff too. That'd be fun.
I love to talk about random Catholic stuff.
Yes, I would love it. That'd be so cool. All right. Well, thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, all that kind of stuff. And we'll put a bunch of links to all the stuff that Cristina mentioned below. Thanks a bunch. Keep thinking.
Thank you.
See ya. There you go. That wasn't so bad, was it?
No, it